Hello, ConocoPhillips employees, and welcome. I'm Sam, and I moderate these weekly webinars. In just a minute, we will be joined by Patrick Ray, who is one of our senior advisors here, and he is going to be offering some insights on how to best eliminate debt before you approach retirement from ConocoPhillips. But before Patrick comes on, I'd like to quickly remind you that we are not affiliated nor endorsed by ConocoPhillips. The Retirement Group is a completely independent group of financial advisors, so please keep that in mind as you listen along with Patrick today. After his presentation, I will rejoin him quickly to ask him some of the questions that came through the Q&A box. I invite you to stick around if you'd like to listen for those. And if you happen to see any YouTube cards popping up on your screen while you watch this video, please feel free to give those a quick click. They will guide you to several different resources that we offer you on a complimentary basis here at the Retirement Group, one of which may be our cash flow analysis that you can book to have run with one of our advisors, and another may be a past video that might be of a topic that might be of interest or concern to ConocoPhillips employees. So take advantage of those. And without further ado, now let's bring on Patrick Ray. Hi, Patrick.
Thank you, Sam. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate your attention today. And today I'm going to be talking about some of the strategic things that you either need to plan for or think through when you are anticipating transitioning into one of the most important financial decisions that you ever have to make, which is retirement. And so we're going to talk about the importance of being debt-free, if it's at all possible. We're going to talk a little bit about optimizing larger debts for retirement. And in that, we're going to talk about planning and loans and some housing things and some other details that might be relevant for you to consider. And then we're going to talk at the end about the importance of the planning process. And so in the beginning, we want to talk about the importance of being debt-free, right? It's a very simple concept, which is the idea of transitioning into retirement and having no debt. Clearly, that is the number one priority if you can make waves to figure out the ability to do so. And of course, it helps a ton with cash flow and the financial aspect of it. But it's amazing how much it deals or helps us with the emotional standpoint or aspect of not having to concern yourself with where your next meal is going to come from, or if you're going to have a roof over your head and those kind of things. And so in our experience, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, that it just helps the quality of your retirement lifestyle, which is a big issue and a concern for many folks, of course. And so if we are in a situation that we have to contemplate the debt side of things and how to tackle it and how to structure it and so forth, that we want to, of course, prioritize the things that are costing you the most, right? Most of that is unsecured debt with respect to credit cards and those kind of things. And we want to also figure out a way to attack that. And in addition, not lose the fact that we've got to continue to save for retirement. And especially if you're working for a company who matches, which most of them do at this point, some level of your 401k deposits, we've got to be 1000% certain that we're taking advantage of the free money that comes into your household, in addition to approaching this debt-free environment where we're prioritizing which debts effectively to pay off. And the one way we do that is we know our debt, basically understanding what debts you have, what the expenditures for those debts are with respect to the interest rates that you're paying, the terms in which you'd be required to pay them. And those are coupled with, credit cards and unsecured lines of credit with respect to, Best Buy accounts and buying furniture and the no interest things that are 12 months when you build a pool or whatever those things are that might be into your household as far as dealing with. And then, of course, this can translate also into student loan debt, which while our clients specifically don't have student loan debt for the most part, oftentimes they consider taking over student loan debt to help out their children, for example, who can't afford maybe to pay the student loan debt. So that needs to be addressed. And then probably the most frequent one, aside from having a mortgage payment that you're trying to finish off at some point, is the auto loan side of things. And specifically understanding the terms and the amounts that you're paying for would do wonders for your overall planning process. And what's unique about the cash flow analysis that Sam had mentioned at the very beginning, which is a complimentary service that we offer, is a way to pinpoint some of these things to help you figure out what the impact of it is over your life expectancy with relationship to your overall net worth. And so calculating extra payments to try to potentially speed those debt payments up to get rid of that is a crucial aspect of this planning process. And oh, by the way, we've been talking about this as a firm from day one, which is this is why we advocate that you start the planning process long before you decide to exit the payroll. Sometimes you don't get a chance to decide. You get to leave the payroll on your own terms, and you work for a company that says, "We appreciate what you've done for your time at the company, but we no longer have a position for you." And that may come as a surprise to many of you. Usually, it is a surprise, and so having an unexpected scenario like that that comes up even advocates further why it's important to do some planning ahead of time so that you control to the greatest degree you can all of these aspects and some of these things that are even uncontrollable to the greatest degree. And so from the debt perspective, car loans and mortgage decisions and potentially strategizing on a prioritization of where your debt actually is. Car loans in retirement are a big one, right? So car loans have a relatively low interest rate in most cases. In fact, I often advocate that if you're due for a car, it's likely that you're going to need to buy a new car once you're in retirement, maybe even more than once. And so if it's possible for you to generate an agreement with a car dealership that has a no interest opportunity, and that often happens where they're looking to push to get rid of cars or to sell cars, that you might have a chance to get into either a no interest loan or a very low 0.99 or 1.99% loan in some cases, which would be very reasonably managed with respect to cash flow, and that we would build that into your cash flow needs with how much money that you actually need to live off of. But of course, on the priority, we would consider paying that off, right? Or if there's any way to reduce it and or refinance it. Like, for example, considering using a home equity loan in a case where you get some potentially tax favorable scenarios to pay cash for your car. That might be something to consider, among other things. We've had people who consider, while they're still working, taking loans from their 401ks, which I'm not advocating, but it's certainly something that's been done, that you could do that and pay yourself back the loan with respect to the car. And there's no adverse tax ramifications or anything like that, assuming that you pay that loan back while you're still employed. So there's ways that you could consider car loans, but this is specifically referring to the car loan that you might consider in retirement. And of course, the lower interest rate environment, or having a no interest scenario, or maybe you do business with GM Financial or Ford Credit or whomever it may be, and they're giving special rates to sell some additional cars. So those are all things that you obviously would want to consider. As far as the mortgage is concerned, this is probably one of the biggest ones that we deal with, and the torn clients and prospects that we have with respect to what to do with the benefits of either paying off their mortgage or investing their funds. And oftentimes, you come from a family who advocated that the number one priority that you have is to pay off your mortgage. And while, of course, in an ideal world, we would love to get there because going into retirement without a mortgage is ideal, but there's still costs associated with living. Of course, you have taxes and insurance related to the property that you own. So it's not like you're going to be free from any expense, but the mortgage side of it with the loan that you've taken from the bank is specifically what we're talking about here. And the difference between potentially, paying that off or adding additional funds to it each and every month so that you pay it off sooner and you help with the amortization schedule on the back end of the loan. You might consider that, of course. And specifically, what I've known or experienced in my practice in helping people is that the emotional aspect of how it feels to be able to have a mortgage-free environment once you're retired is a big deal. And certainly we shouldn't take that lightly in any aspect. And so if there's a way that we can fast forward the payments or make an extra payment, you might consider making multiple payments in addition each time you make a payment. So for example, instead of making one payment, often banks don't have a prepayment penalty for you to make biweekly payments. And assuming that money is applied to the principal of your loan, then you would end up wiping off some years on the back end of the mortgage if you make biweekly payments. And oftentimes that means that you're making an extra payment or almost two payments in a given tax year. So you want to be careful about that. But that's something to consider. And as long as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that you're absorbing the majority of all of the funds available to you on the match in your 401k, and then you're teetering on what to do with these extra expenses or the extra income that you could potentially have because you got a raise or a promotion, then we can start talking about ways to factor in having additional payment scenarios to mortgages and cars and things like that. But we know that the mortgage decision is a big deal and it's an emotional decision. And certainly there are some strategic aspects of the mortgage discussion that we would likely need to talk further for your specific scenario if this is something that applies to you. And from a debt prioritization perspective, what we're looking to do here is if you have a bunch of debt and some of that incurs or is included with unsecured debt, credit card debt, where you're getting charged 19 to 20, maybe even 25, or in some cases 29% on these interest payments, we've got to prioritize how to structure a schedule so that you can attack this debt to the greatest degree you can and focus on the high debt of what's most expensive for you and work downward to the most least expensive for you. And so, especially as close to or getting close to retirement per se in the big picture of things, this is unbelievably important. And I might add that another concern would be, if you're considering retirement and we're still in the debt mode of unsecured and credit card debt and things like this, then we might have to evaluate how much money that you're actually spending because you might be spending more than you otherwise assumed. And so this is a huge concern and something that we need to address immediately, which is how much money you actually need to live off of. And that's kind of the core of understanding your cash flow analysis and what it looks like when you actually retire. And if we're supplementing that, monthly income to be able to pay off some of this debt that you've incurred over the years, we want to make sure that once you get rid of this debt, that it doesn't occur again, which unfortunately for some of the clients that I've helped, that's happened. And we've got to do our best to tackle that in the greatest degree we can. And you have to have a plan to do that. So from a planning perspective and considering these other loans and housing and all these other key strategies that among others that we've talked about a little bit this afternoon, managing retirement income and expenses, navigating student loans in the event that they apply to you, the mortgage repayment strategies, and then we'll do a little recap. So these are the final bullet points that I want to cover. So managing retirement income and expenses by estimating what it is that you need to live off of from, it just helps from all aspects. Planning, the emotional side of this. We know that retirement is one of the most stressful events that you'll ever have to go through. So the more that you plan, the more likely you'll be able to transition into retirement as stress-free as possible. Okay. Now, the key that we always get asked on a regular basis is, well, I have no idea what I need to live off of. That's a very common disclosure from folks that we help. And so I would encourage you to think in terms of what lands in your paycheck every 2 weeks after income taxes and withdrawals from your 401k and healthcare expenses and Christmas club things and car payments that you have earmarked out of your credit union account or whatever the case may be, and know that you have a net number of X dollars. And then, of course, if you have that twice a month, then we consider multiplying that number by 2, and that's where we start. That is a net number that you can utilize in an effort to figure out where we start on what it is that you need to live off of. And then you might say to yourself, well, we run a cash flow analysis based on this and say, oh man, that doesn't seem like enough money. And so we can obviously back into an appropriate plan with maybe it's because it's not enough because of the debt structure that we need to come up with as far as a coordinated plan to tackle. Then that's just the more of the relevance with respect to the planning process. And I can't stress enough how important that is. So we want to make informed decisions about not just your mortgage, but as I mentioned earlier, the home equity side of things, right? For example, if it's time to buy a car, we may decide that the home equity side of the loan situation as opposed to borrowing money straight from GM Financial or Ford Credit or whoever it may be, might be a better avenue for you and your family, especially from a retirement perspective. On the federal loan side, of course, we want to pay attention to the need for your income and how that affects your student loans and understanding the rights from a debt collector's perspective. This is all pretty important stuff that would be applicable to any debt that you own, of course. And you've got some protection rights, of course, if you're assuming the ownership of a loan on your own loan from a federal student loan perspective. So those are some variables that you obviously want to consider. And then the extra payments, so refinancing on a shorter term mortgage. Interest rates are high right now. Many of you may already have a loan that you established when the rates were in the threes. I have some clients who have like 275 on some of their notes because they did a great job at paying attention to that and refinancing at the right times when we had an extremely low interest rate environment. And of course, it would not be favorable for you to consider refinancing that particular debt if you're still carrying a mortgage. And so we want to make sure that we make some strategic planning moves with respect to the mortgage itself. And of course, the downside of potentially paying off your mortgage, because this is one of the priorities for some folks that they say, look, in order for me to make this retirement thing work, I've got to pay off my mortgage. And so we want to make sure that we take a look at that amortization schedule from the bank, and we know that there's not any favorable tax treatment that you're giving up, and that it makes sense for you to incur potential tax and even penalties if you're not old enough from removing money from your qualified retirement plans to turn around and pay off a mortgage of which you still owe taxes and insurance for. So really, the only thing you're getting rid of is the principal and interest aspect of your mortgage. And so we want to make sure that we consider all of those things before we decide to just write a check and pay off your mortgage in the grand scheme of things. And of course, as a kind of a function of what we've talked about very, very briefly today, is achieving a debt-free environment and the ability to have a successful retirement, number one, but also having a stress-free environment. And I can't express to you enough how beneficial that is for someone who can enjoy transitioning into the next phase of their life, right? Spending time with their grandkids or traveling or having time spent with their friends and people that they enjoy spending time with, that this is a big deal. And so the careful planning and the prioritization of all of these things that we talked about is a big deal that we don't take lightly, which is why we offer the cash flow analysis as a way to start the planning process if you hadn't already done so, because we feel very passionate about helping folks get into that mindset. And so, as I mentioned, the planning aspect is something that we specialize in. Of course, we know that statistically 74% of people over the age of 50 do not have a written financial plan. And to be honest with you, there's really no excuse for that, because firms like ours do it for free. I mean, we're willing to spend some time with you if you're willing to invest some time with us and help you with some of these things that might be ultimately a priority at some point. And the sooner you do it, the better off you're ultimately going to end up being. And so the retirement group has been around for over 30 years. We have a ton of combined work history experience with the advisors on the team that have a specialist knowledge with some of the companies that you actually work for. A lot of Fortune 100 firms that we've been accustomed to helping employees from would be not namely. And so because we have offices all across the country and that we have an extreme and intimate knowledge of the savings plans and the retirement plans and pension plans and medical plans and all that stuff, we feel like we're a great fit for someone who's looking for a partner in retirement. And so if you want one of those cash flow complimentary analysis, you can reach out to us at info@theretirementgroup.com. Email us there and the team will get back to you for sure. You can call this 800 number, and that number is 800-900-5867. You can take a picture of this QR code to the left, which would get you access to the calendar that you can book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll spend a few minutes with you and kind of get you on track to provide us with what we need to present you that cash flow analysis to you and your family. And then if you're not already doing so, you follow us on this LinkedIn page. This LinkedIn page is a great tool for us where we have a lot of company-specific information for those of you who have companies or working for companies that we update on this LinkedIn page. You might check this out if you haven't already done so. And so I'll finish up by just simply saying that in my experience, there's not enough time and energy in this planning process to be able to cover all of the things. And the sooner that you get attached to spending some time and putting some energy into this, the better off your household and family ultimately will be when you transition into retirement. And so with that, I'll pass it back to Sam to see if there's any questions that I can answer before I let you go for the afternoon. Sam?
Thank you, Patrick, for all of that information. That's great. That's some great stuff to think about. I feel like this is a really popular question, so I want to make sure you answer this. Should I focus on paying off my mortgage or investing extra funds as I approach retirement?
Yeah, this is easily one of the most common questions that we get, right? And the true answer is it depends. There's no blanket answer that says it's right. I mean, obviously, if you can do both, good for you. I can make it crystal clear to everyone that no one that we've ever helped has retired with too much money. So putting extra funds in your 401k or your retirement plans is easily not a mistake in almost any case. The real aspect of what we're talking about with this specific question is how to balance the two, right? Where you can potentially attack some creative ways to pay off your mortgage sooner, but not give up, certainly not just your deposits to your 401k as an example, but that free money that comes from a match. So I would say there's really no way to focus anything other than putting money in your 401k if you're not putting enough in to get the match from whatever company that you work for. So once you get past that threshold, then we can start talking intelligently about a plan that you could come up with to balance not only saving some additional money, but potentially attacking the mortgage side of things, because that's where this extra funds question really stems from. So I hope that helps.
Alrighty, thank you. This is another one that I think is becoming increasingly more common. Should I continue to work part-time in retirement?
Yes, I mean
Mhm.
that's a given in most every case. Now that's my opinion, or that's our firm's opinion for the most part, which is just to help you with keeping checked in. To be perfectly honest with you, I mean, unless you have a specific plan that says when you're transitioning off the payroll that you're going to, spend 5 days a week golfing and hiking and traveling and watching the grandkids and spending time with family or whatever. I think it's very important, absolutely, and I would absolutely say yes, you should continue to work part time. And unfortunately, what we equate working to is what you're accustomed to today, right? So, in other words, your plan when you work is to create as much income as possible, which is clearly the best plan while you're in your working years. But we're talking about when you transition into retirement and maybe just enjoying some time with a camaraderie of coworkers that you've been accustomed to for the last 30 or 40 years. That might be a very good reason to do it, right? So, for example, if you enjoy golfing, you might go to work 2 days a week at the golf course to pick up range balls so that you can play free golf. So it helps you with one of the potential expenses that we're trying to plan for from a cash flow perspective. And so there's all kinds of other avenues that you could consider with respect to if you should work part time. But the default answer is yes, I think you should.
Got it. Thank you, Patrick. And this is going to be our last one. How do I make sure I don't run out of money in retirement?
Plan carefully.
Yeah.
Can't boy, that's a loaded question, right? How,
Right.
how do I make sure that you don't run out of money? Um, have a plan and make sure that that's plan correlated. It's correlated to the things that you enjoy doing, and treat it as if you only have a defined amount, right? I mean that number that you have that you from a capital perspective that's designed to help you live for the rest of your life as a household doesn't grow anymore, and so you have to get comfortable and be at peace with understanding that when you're removing money from your retirement account, it's a finite pool. And even though those investments are potentially earning interest, which we hope obviously happens, you're still removing capital each and every month. So when you can go out of your way to ensure that you're spending money on the things you need to spend money on and not anything more over and above that, then you're doing pretty much what you can to help yourself avoid running out of money, right? But you have to be reasonable also. I mean, oftentimes I see people who they're making $4,000 a month, for example, and when I ask them how much they need in retirement, somehow they need 6,000 a month, but they're only making four. And
Mm.
so that's a 50% increase in what they need to live off of. And I'm trying to understand how the math is going to work out. And it's not. And I show them that they're running out of money in their cash flow analysis by age 75. And, some of them don't listen. And it's unfortunate because we're here to help and counsel you, right? So the answer to the question is, how do you make sure you don't run out of money when you're in retirement is
Mhm.
you do your best to have a plan and then just simply focus on the plan and make sure that each and every year you review the plan, right? So you can see how much money you've removed in the last 12 months, because that's a defined period behind us, right? We know exactly what you earned as a rate of return. We know how much money you paid in fees. We know how much money you paid in taxes. And you can couple that with if this were to continue from today going forward, this is what your plan looks like. And frankly, you can use that and base that as a comparison off of the initial plan for you to see if you're effectively on track to meet your overall long-term goals. So I hope that helps.
That definitely helps. Alrighty, Patrick, that was all we had time for today. We kept it nice and short. Any last words before we go?
I don't. I can't stress enough how the importance of the planning process plays a role in what it is that we're talking about, whether we're trying to tackle debt or figure out how to, manage your mortgage or additional healthcare expenses that you may have, and all of these other things. And so, yeah, take advantage of the opportunity that you have. Where we're delighted to spend some time with you if you want to spend some time with us. And so, with that, we'll let you go for the afternoon. We hope you found some value in what we had to talk about, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Patrick.